Hey kids, howdy and welcome to this week's episode of Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. Zoe and I are here. It's January 20th, but just so you guys know, we're not recording on January 20th. We're recording the week before, so I just want to let you know, Zoe and I are fine. We are both safe. The fires are still raging as we make this recording, and that's problematic in a lot of ways, but we are both safe and well, and we both wanted you guys to know that. And so you left town.
Yeah, I've been staying in the OC, Orange County, for some cleaner air. The air's been bothering my asthma,
Yeah, the
although,
air's problematic. The air's killing my immune
house,
system.
my
Yeah,
things.
the air is awful, but we're safe.
We're
And
safe.
thank you for the love and the support and the messages, both to us directly as well as just globally, outside of some of the people who are happy that, Sin City's burning to the ground because they're loving Christians.
Oh yeah, that
Most
take.
people are happy to know that we are safe, and eventually this will be something that is behind us. Meanwhile, announcements are that my Radical Forgiveness class starts this coming Saturday. I chose this class very specifically for the top of the year for the same reason why this was the first class I ever created in my online teaching. It was the pandemic. It was 2-3 months into the shutdown. I looked out into the world and all of that polarization and anger was rising up and people were like raging and losing their shit in the streets. And I thought, I have to serve somehow. I looked out at the angry world and I thought, forgiveness. All of this enmity and polarization needed forgiveness. So I created this class, which just sort of takes a person through the process of diving into a story of unforgiveness, moving into the anger and rage, the sadness below, and the possibility of healing and forgiveness that comes when we are, when we move through something like that. So I thought, with the world going crazy and the United States falling apart, as we enter this year, a little forgiveness work is probably, a good idea. So check that out at michaellennox.com if you have a little unforgiveness in your heart and you want to do one of my 4-week classes.
I feel like forgiveness is always of the moment.
Yeah,
It's
in fact, I would
one of the
say,
most
like,
helpful things I've learned in life.
It is, it's like the linchpin to everything.
Yeah.
Unforgiveness keeps the system locked up. Forgiveness opens it up. And we tend to, as human beings, hold on to our unforgivenesses and our grudges because there's something that feels good and right about that, but it's terribly destructive. So let go of something with my support, and it's a deep dive of a class and one of my favorites. We have a question today from Jody. Jody writes, so appreciative of all the info you gift us each and every week in your pod and daily updates. I know you don't do personal chart stuff in these questions, and I am using mine to ask the question, and I hope it helps for clarity. As the nodes shift to Virgo Pisces, I am wondering if that has any effect on, or what effect it has on people with those placements in their charts. Then she goes on to say that she has Virgo Pisces placements in her chart that are not about where her nodes are. But she's curious if they will have a deeper impact because she has those placements in her chart. I hope you and all your loved ones are safe from the terrible fires in California right now. Sending deep love and energetic safety to you from the East Coast of Canada, Jody. And thank you. We just talked about that and appreciate the. This was one example of the loving messages that have been coming in. So, first and foremost, everybody has Pisces and Virgo placements in their chart. Even if you don't have a planet or a point in Pisces or Virgo, you have the sign of Pisces and the sign of Virgo, which means you have at least one house ruled by Pisces and the opposite house ruled by Virgo. So, from one thing to just get from that is if you know the houses that are ruled by these signs, one's Pisces house in one's natal chart is where all of the forward energy is going to be directed over the next year and a half. Because the North Node in Pisces says, what's moving forward? What's the North Star of the collective? So it's kind of like this. Where the North Node is where the world is sort of focused. So any point you have or house placement you have in Pisces is now in a position this year and the first half of next year to have whatever consciousness there is in Pisces in your chart to be like ready for the world to receive it. So if you don't have any planets or points, then it's just the house in your natal chart ruled by Pisces that will receive most of the focus of transformation and change and North Star energy of moving forward. I'd like to tell the story that when the North Node of the Moon was in Libra, which is my midheaven of work and career, that was the year I got my first book deal. The world was ready for my professional expressions when the North Node was moving over my 10th house of work and career. So you check the Pisces house in your chart, and that's the area of your life and consciousness that will have some emphasis, and any planet or points in the sign of Pisces will have a very direct experience of that planet's consciousness lining up with the outside world as you inhabit it. But those moments will happen when the North Node is at the degree point of the planet or point in question. In other words, that's not happening all year and a half if you have a point in Pisces. Like I've got my Chiron at 13 degrees of Pisces. Well, that won't be hit by the North Node until 2026, right? Because the North Node has to move 30 degrees. So if you know your chart well enough to identify those Pisces planet points and you sort of have an understanding of 18 months to move 30 degrees, you can time out when the North Node will cross a planet in Pisces, signaling a moment where that consciousness is ready to be put out into the world. And the same exact thing is true for Virgo, only the opposite sensibility. Your Virgo house is releasing things and letting go. That's where you're moving away from consciousness or shifting it. And any planets or points in Virgo will have the energy of the south node of the past, kind of swiping away all of the detritus of that planet's consciousness as the south node crosses over it. So, for example, if the south node is crossing over your moon, that means your unconscious, emotional patterning is going to have an opportunity to be let go of or released or deepened in terms of, understanding your unconscious impulses and having more, conscious awareness of them. So to take advantage of this information, all you have to do is split it into this binary. Pisces forwards, Virgo backward. Pisces is what we're lifting up and emphasizing, and Virgo energy is what we're transmuting and releasing and letting go of. Follow that binary, and you should be well supported with what the North Node in Pisces is going to bring you over the next 18 months. So yesterday, we entered the Aquarius mansion. I think it was in the mid-afternoon Pacific time. On Sunday the 19th, the sun moved out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, setting us up for the mansion ruled by Uranus, where we are a little more ready to break out of the box and try new things, follow our innovative impulses, and rebel a little bit, right? The Aquarius energy is I go my own way no matter what the community thinks of me. So there's a beautiful, sense of uniqueness and individuality in the Aquarius season because this is the sign where each of our unique individual expressions are supported, are loved, are honored, are wanted. And why this is because Aquarius is the archetype that makes up the collective. It's the community, the world community. The age of Aquarius is the age where we all sort of live in harmony in one world community. If we can make it through the first decade or so or the next decade or so, we will be sailing well into a world where we are creating one global community where all are lifted up and cared for. So how this fits to our personal experience of the zodiac, even if we are not Aquarius suns, is that
Mhm.
in this time of the year, we all get to lean into that which makes each of us unique and different so that we can support the collective more efficiently. Right? If everybody's conforming, then we have no diversity, and therefore we're not covering every base. But when everybody is permitted to be their own unique expression, that's when all of the 8 billion fractal individualized consciousness on the planet operate as really one true collective. So there's something juicy about the Aquarius season this year because Pluto has moved into Aquarius, and Aquarius is the area for the next 20 years where the most deep changes and transformations are going to take place. I talk a lot about this collectively because Pluto and Uranus and Neptune all changing signs later this year is going to reflect lots of wild shifts on the planet in terms of fast and sudden change. So there's something important for us today, literally the 20th of January, because the Sun and Pluto are together by conjunction. Now, they do this once a year, right? The Sun touches every planet once a year. What I love about the Sun and Pluto is that they are the tension of opposites of conscious awareness as the central sort of expansive thing that's happening here, and this outlying planet that represents death, right? The Sun represents life force in and of itself, and Pluto is how we, as human beings who can only experience a binary, we can't experience God consciousness. We have to split it up into
Yeah.
up, down, in breath, out breath. That's us human beings. From a daily astro alert perspective, the energy of today features issues of power, personal magnetism, revealing of the inner self, conscious awareness and shadow. That's what I meant by the sort of tension of opposites of the Sun at the center of us and Pluto that says if we don't die in the binary, we can't have infinite life, right? Infinite life exists because we as individuals come in and then we die and we leave. Pluto invented that. And so the Sun moving into Aquarius yesterday also lights up our inner shadow transformational energy that marks what we're going to be up to for the next 2 decades. And so in some ways, there's a great inventory opportunity today with the Sun and Pluto coming together, where you suddenly have light flooding into your basement that you can look around and you can see where are the shadows that sort of grab us. So it's definitely a juicy and yummy energy for the start of the week, but it has this opportunity of our conscious awareness staring down at all of which is in our sort of underbelly that will have to be dealt with. So take a look in your basement today and just see what you can learn. There is a transit over the weekend ahead of us that's one of the sort of big ones of the year. There are not a lot of these. And if you did my astro overview for 2025, you know all about them. There's a whole handout that lists them all out, and this is the first one of the year. It's Saturn in a semi-square with Pluto. Saturn is about what we're trying to build, not from a Jupiter perspective where it's like the expansive delight in wanting to create something more. You need Saturn to build that more that Jupiter wants, right? That's why they work well together as a social planet. Jupiter gives us the expansion, but if we want to build something, we need Saturn in the house. So anytime Saturn interacts with other outer or social planets, then we know we're in some kind of an energy that relates to what we're trying to create or build or make happen through discipline and responsibility. Pluto is the energy of change. Growth and change are intrinsically bound. You cannot make new things without changing the old things. So Saturn and Pluto interacting with each other are about the foundations you're building and the change required to create those new foundations. But the semi-square geometry is mild conflict. This is one of those pace-setting transits. I don't think you need to look at how this is going to hit you personally outside of. We all have our sense of we want what we want when we want it, and we probably want it delivered, and we want it yesterday.
Of course.
Right? But life has its own pace. And sometimes a transit like this is just a pace setter. It says, whoa, not so fast. There's going to be more frustrations and breakdowns than you were planning on. And so this transit hitting this coming weekend sort of says the month behind us, maybe even a little more than a month, 5-6 weeks behind us, and the 4 or 5 weeks in front of us now are marked by this sort of frustration in tempo and pace. Now, what's fascinating about just the moment when this hits, the date is the 26th. That is next Sunday. And so while this energy hasn't had an influence over the reflection of the last couple of weeks, Sunday itself stands to be a little bit cranky because of the peak of that transit. But on the same day, Venus and Mercury are just exploding with yummy delight. So, Mercury in a sextile with the North Node will mean connections and conversations about where we're going next in a very supportive and positive way. A sextile from Mercury to Neptune means that our spiritual practice is right there in the mix as we're making decisions and choices about where we want to go next. We're filled with the inspiration that only comes from the divine. Venus in a trine with Mars puts passion and equal attentiveness to masculine and feminine energies and a real balance of what happens when you get both in the room. Like the hot water and the cold water turned on full blast, you get yummy, lovely, warm water. And Venus will also sextile Uranus, which brings surprise and rebellion and emotional risk-taking into the mix. So I'm not even really sure why I'm telling you about all of this, because I usually have specific purpose. I don't talk about in the podcast a lot of the fast-moving personal planet transits. First of all, I cover them every day in my Red Robe Astrology videos and my daily astro alerts if you're a subscriber. And I use the podcast for the big sweeping sort of constructs. But in the same way that today deserves a kind of inventory, take a look at what you know about what you're working with from unconscious material and patterns from your history that you're trying to work on, all of the shadow material. It's a good inventory day today. But similarly over the weekend, particularly Sunday, it's also an interesting day to have our mind and our hearts so lit up with possibility and inspiration on the very same day that Saturn and Pluto are saying it's going to take longer than you want. It's going to include frustrating changes as you go. Can you do both? Can you hold the inspiration and the desire and the sense of forward movement and excitement that comes while also respecting not only the pace and the slowness of change, but I would say Saturn and Pluto in a semi-square is also reflecting how fucking hard things are right now. The United States is going insane post-election and pre-new president and fires in Southern California, right? And so there are also hotspots all over the world right now that are reflecting a kind of Saturnian and Plutonian squeeze. And because the transit peaks on the 26th and Mercury and Venus are so juicily and yummily occupied, that's another great moment to either do a kind of an inventory with how is your mind and heart working with the current landscape that's so difficult? The opportunity over the weekend is to combine a sense of clarity, excitement, and emotional satisfaction with what it is you are up to creating, while simultaneously seeing the world as the world is and not letting it deter you from knowing what your vision is and moving forward, mind and heart in alignment, even though the world might be burning around us as we do that.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have an email and dream from Tara. Tara says, "Hi, Michael and Zoe. I look forward to your podcast each week. Thank you for devoting your precious time to this work. It's appreciated." A little backstory before I get into the dream. I found out yesterday that my great aunt has cancer and will be passing soon. My grandmother, her sister, died a few years ago, and we were very close. The morning I woke from the dream was the 10th anniversary of my mother's death.
Wow.
We had a rocky relationship, and this is also true of her and her mom. Here's the dream. I was in a big church, not one I recognize from my walking life, with my extended family. There were a lot of other people around, and service was about to start. There were 2 sanctuaries, and my mom was anxious to get us all in and seated. We chose the lower sanctuary.
I don't even know what that means, but I like it.
Once we got seated, my mom was upset because my grandmother wasn't with us. She asked me to go find her. I found my grandma in the upper sanctuary, sitting in the back pew with her sister. When I spotted them, they were laughing like little kids. I could see the joy on their faces of being together. My grandma caught my eye and told me, without speaking, that she was fine and I was to leave her there. Then the dream switched. Suddenly, I was in a different place. I was some type of student nurse caring for 2 young women in a home. I was shadowing someone. This person took me room to room, showing me how to check the machines, change dressing, clean, etc. We had to be fully covered in PPE while caring for these women. In the last room, suddenly, I was expecting to do everything on my own, and I was screwing everything up. I also didn't have the right supplies. I would go to get more supplies, but when I came back, there would be even less of what I needed there. Finally, I had to go to a different house to get what I needed. Walking there, I saw my young son playing basketball with a friend. He was grade school age in the dream. In real life, he's in high school. This house was to the left. I knew my oldest son was in the house to the right. I was going to get supplies from the home in the middle. I knew they needed to be picked up soon and was worried I'd be late. When I got back to the woman I was to care for, my mentor was completely out of her PPE. We had a new problem. I looked at the patient and she was bleeding from a gaping wound on her forehead. My mentor took a piece of gauze and stuck it inside the wound. As I saw her finger go inside, I felt my waking mind say, I'm not up for this, and then I woke up. Thank you for your insight, Tara.
Wow. Well, I'm Tara. I'm afraid to tell you, you are up for it. Even if your expression is, I'm not up for it, because it's happening. All right. So if I'm understanding, though, everybody's passed away, right? The great aunt has cancer, so she's alive but ill. Grandmother died a few years ago, and it's 10 years since mom's passing.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, of course, it's definitely a family dream, an intergenerational dream, right? Partly because it's in the dream, big church with extended family. Church is a public place, not a private place. So, therefore, in the dream world, a church would be more about community gathering and being out in the world rather than
Yeah.
your private experience. So, but it's about spiritual connection or religious beliefs or the dogma and the rules and regulations that religion and families both sort of abide by.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is this two sanctuary things, right? I giggle just at hearing the image because right there's a kind of binary that we have to consider as we approach the dream. Like Tara is not here first to talk about it, but Tara, you have to think about why two sanctuaries. At first I thought one was the sanctuary for the living and the other was the sanctuary for the passing. But then I realized in the details of the dream, that's not the case because mom is downstairs, grandma's upstairs.
Oh,
and
right.
The aunt who hasn't passed yet is going to be upstairs. So the upstairs sanctuary, the upper sanctuary can't necessarily be about the spiritual realm. But I can't help but think higher and lower. Lower thoughts, higher thoughts. In fact, even just the idea that grandma and her sister are laughing, they're expressing joy. That's a higher vibration than complaint or challenge. And if Tara has challenges with her mom, and there's generational challenges, then I can understand there being a kind of divide for Tara that the older generation, the grandmother generation, might have offered more wisdom about joy and laughter. These would be the questions that I would be asking Tara, like why are they set apart? And the juicy thing about dreams is we could go into all sorts of different sort of reflections of that. The two women in the upper sanctuary are of the other generation. And then the lower sanctuary where mother and daughter are is sort of like Tara's generational experience, right? So that could be a separation of sanctuaries. But I still like this idea that the upper sanctuary where grandma and the aunt are, they're expressing something about life is joyful because we're together. That community and sharing and family is a joyful thing. That's a higher church thoughts than a lower one where complaint and difficulty might live. I even like this. Grandma caught her eye to indicate that she's fine. That to me is a kind of indication that there's something about this structure of grandma and the aunt in the upper and mom and Tara in the lower is important. And I think I've given enough possibilities for at least Tara to muse about this and sort of, make her own associations. But there is something to be said for where we go next that speaks to a higher version of a journey.
Because it's in houses, or?
Because there's care and instructions. Nurse means caring of health, right? So it doesn't have to be
Totally.
literal, because it's a nurse doesn't, although there is illness in this section of the dream, we transcend the literarity of the scenario and we go to the archetype. So she's a student nurse, which means she's just learning how to care for herself. So we've got grandmas and moms, and now Tara expressing probably, I have to learn how to really care for myself because it might not have been available to me generationally. And I would ask Tara, was there more joy from grandma in your upbringing? I bet you she'd say yes.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, the student nurse consciousness and the shadowing, learning like where the rooms are set up and how to do, the things that need to be done is about Tara learning how to care for herself. And the fact that there are two young women, that's just interesting to me. 2 layers in the church, 2 young women. She doesn't really give any big specifics about the 2 different women, but I hope to have something to say about the 2 women before I'm finished. All of the details about the PPE and the covering, that just to me is reflecting that this second dream is about healing. It's about self-investigation. It's about change and transformation. It's kind of like if this is a generational consciousness dream, now Tara is not only wanting to learn how to care for herself, she's wanting to make sure that she doesn't pass along the intergenerational trauma to her children. How we know that, I think, is because when she gets to this house on the left, it's a house, which means it's herself. It's on the left, which means it's a kind of the feminine principle of self-investigation. And in that scenario, her young son seems fine and her oldest son seems fine. So that's what I think is going on there is that Tara is in the process of learning how to not transfer the intergenerational wound too terribly onto her children. Now, do I have this accurate, Zoe, in this last scene when we get into this, the back to the woman and Tara's mentor, but this new problem, right? They're running out of PPE.
Mm-hmm.
Is Tara sticking her finger into the wound on the woman's forehead? Do I have that right?
No, it was the person teaching her. The nurse mentor took a piece of gauze and stuck it inside the wound, and then her finger went inside
Oh, okay. So the
wound as
nurse,
well.
the nurse teacher touches the woman's wound in the forehead. Tara's watching this.
And then Tara's
says, "I'm not
watching
up for
it
this."
and is like, yeah, I'm not up for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I meant when I said you are up for it. Because one of the things that I feel very certain about dreams is that they are always for us, and we have to interpret them not the way we would interpret a life event. If I killed you in life, that would be very bad, and I might get arrested and you'd be gone. Very bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if I kill you in a dream, then I'm changing and transforming some aspect of myself that's best described by your character out in the real world. So similarly, Tara looking at what's needed. And what's needed? An increase in intuitive guidance. Forehead, pineal gland, third eye. It's wounded, it's broken. and the nurse is showing her how to fix it. So the I'm not up for this in dreamland is reflecting Tara's overwhelm at the emotional process that she's in right now. So we don't see it as like bad news. Tara's gonna fail. To me, it's the opposite, because Tara's dream is showing her the whole picture, where the origination of the challenge that she's looking at is, which is generational. What's the solution ultimately is all of this shift and change personally around intuition and a spiritual connection to all things. And the I'm not up for it is just the resistance. And that's what dreams are for. They show us where we are resisting so that we can wake up the next day and do it all over again.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.